I mean, they were very rigorous, and things had to be polished to a ludicrous degree. Well, for about a year, I was shithouse orderly for our billet, and I worked very hard and conscientiously to produce a very good toilet, and eventually got to the point where, because quite clearly you didn't want anybody using it and defiling it and making extra work for you, I just padlocked it, and it was only open for inspections, and anybody who wanted to go to the toilet, even in the middle of the night, in the middle of winter, would have to go to an adjoining billet where they weren't quite so keen on their toilets. And on the annual admin parade, the inspecting general said to me he had never seen during the whole of his military service a finer toilet, and people were almost weeping with joy and prepared to shake my hand with gratitude when he disappeared. It was probably the highest point of my military career, I'd say. The first exposure that I'd ever had, for example, to people from Newcastle, I'd never heard a Geordie accent in my life before, and it was just after, a few years after the Hungarian uprising and the influx into the country of a load of Hungarian refugees. And when I heard my first Geordie, I assumed they must be Hungarian refugees and therefore unable to speak English terrifically well. And I was very swiftly disabused of this notion. It sounds almost strange to say, but I rather enjoyed it, to be perfectly honest. There's a certain amount of satisfaction to be derived from... We were rather good at it, our little squad, and we had a good sergeant who responded to the fact that we were rather good at it. And there is a certain amount of satisfaction to be derived from being a cog in such a machine. You know, I suppose it's the same sort of thrill you get, if you get a thrill, from something like synchronized swimming or ballroom dancing or something. I mean, so it didn't bother me at all. And I occasionally reproduced some of my finer moves for the amusement of my children and things like that at home. I've retained them all, you know. You never lose these skills. It's like riding a bicycle. The longer you were there, the more you learnt in the way of evasion, particularly. So you could devise techniques and tactics which, during your last 6 months or so, would enable you to live like a god, really, and do nothing. I just drifted, really, from one radar set to another, drinking cups of tea in the back of the radar set, because you could plug kettle in the back somewhere, or playing football. And if anybody came up to you and said, can you take this message over to Captain Jones or something, I'd just say, officer, I'm doing a job for somebody else at the moment. I'll get back as quickly as I can, you know. And I did absolutely nothing. The one good aspect of it, or certainly the best aspect of it, was that and the one thing which I think would be useful for people today, without wanting to get into any kind of Daily Express thing, I'd bring back national service, but it did compel you, actually, to think about other people's needs and requirements in addition to your own, because you all had to work together, even if it was in just things like, well, petty theft and evasion were the two things which I learnt, really, during national service.